She looked too simple for a woman driving alone on a lonely American road. Messy ponytail, faded jeans, and a kind smile. No one would ever guess that Evelyn Harper was an heiress to her late father's multi-million-dollar real estate empire. But life had a way of testing humility. And this test began the day her rented car broke down miles away from home. The sun was setting behind the hills on a lonely highway in Texas. The air was quiet, except for the sputtering sound of an old rented sedan parked by the roadside with smoke rising from under the hood. Standing beside it was a woman, Evelyn Harper. A simple white blouse tucked into faded jeans, her long golden hair tied into a loose ponytail. She looked tired but graceful. Her sneakers were dusty, her lips dry from the heat. Yet her eyes held a calm strength that only life's toughest storms could build. To any passerby, she looked like an ordinary traveler, maybe even struggling. But appearances can deceive. Evelyn wasn't broke. Back in her home state, she owned several real estate properties left behind by her late father, a single dad who raised her alone after her parents separated. He had passed away just a year earlier, leaving her not only his wealth but also his humility. She was traveling to another state that evening to finalize one of her father's estate deals. But fate had other plans. The car broke down in the middle of nowhere. For a few minutes, Evelyn stood there, checking her phone, but there was no network signal. She sighed, brushed her hair from her face, and whispered, "Guess it's just me and the road tonight." Then she heard the distant hum of an approaching car. It was a sleek black Mercedes G-Wagon, shining under the orange glow of sunset. It slowed down beside her, and the tinted window rolled down. Behind the wheel sat a man in his early 30s, confident, warm smile, eyes that carried both ambition and kindness. His name was Richard Lewis. In the passenger seat beside him sat a woman whose posture screamed pride, Patricia Lewis, Richard's mother. Richard leaned forward, concern written on his face. "Hey, do you need help, miss?" Evelyn gave a little smile. "Seems like my car's given up on me." Patricia sighed loudly. "Oh, Richard. She can call a tow truck. You don't need to stop for every stranger." But Richard ignored his mom. He stepped out, jacket fluttering in the evening wind, and opened the hood to take a look. Evelyn stood quietly, her hands folded, unsure if she should thank him or apologize for the trouble. "Looks like your radiator's overheated," he said. "There's a small town just 10 miles down the road. We can give you a ride if you'd like." Evelyn hesitated for a moment, then nodded politely. "Thank you. That would mean a lot." Patricia muttered under her breath as Evelyn climbed into back seat. She said, "This is why good men end up with problems, picking up random women by the road." Evelyn stepped gently into the car, offered a polite smile, and said, "Good evening, ma'am." But Patricia barely glanced away, replying with a cold, dismissive tone that carried quiet disapproval. Evelyn heard every word, but she just smiled faintly, looked out the window, and stayed silent. That day was the beginning of something neither of them could have imagined. One act of kindness that would soon reveal who people truly were. Evelyn settled quietly into the back seat as the car pulled back onto the road. Richard glanced at her through the mirror and said with a warm smile, "I'm Richard, by the way. What's your name?" She smiled softly. "Evelyn," she replied. He nodded. "Nice to meet you, Evelyn. What takes you out here all alone?" "I'm an interior designer," she answered calmly. "I was traveling to meet a client for a project." Before Richard could respond, his mother, Patricia, turned sharply from the front seat. "Interior designer?" she repeated, her tone thick with doubt. "That's what you do for a living?" Richard sighed gently. "Mom," he said quietly, glancing at her. She already said that before. The rest of the journey unfolded in quiet calm. Richard, sensing the tension in the air, simply turned up the volume of his car stereo. A soft love song filled the silence, one of his favorites, gentle and timeless. Evelyn leaned her head slightly toward the window, watching the evening sky stretch across the horizon as the miles rolled by. No one spoke much after that. Patricia sat with her usual air of superiority, while Richard occasionally stole glances at Evelyn, intrigued by her quiet grace. When they finally arrived in the state she was headed to, Richard slowed the car near her destination. Evelyn smiled politely. "Thank you so much for the ride, Richard. I really appreciate your kindness. He nodded warmly. Anytime, Evelyn. I'm just glad I drove by when I did. Before she stepped out, he hesitated for a moment and said, "Can I have your number? You know, just in case you need help, or maybe to check on you." Evelyn smiled shyly and gave it to him. He saved it immediately, and as she waved goodbye, Richard watched her walk away, still wondering why someone so simple felt so different. Then he drove off, heading home with his mother, who sat quietly this time, her eyes fixed ahead, lost in silent judgment. As Richard drove home, his mother glanced at it with that sharp, knowing look only mothers have. "Richard," she began softly but firmly, "I saw the way you looked at that girl. What exactly do you plan to do with her number?" He smiled faintly, eyes on the road. "She just seems different, Mom." His mother shook her head. "Different doesn't mean she's the one. You're not a boy anymore, and I won't sit back and watch you waste time on just any girl. I want to see you married, but to someone who truly fits into this family." Richard let out a quiet sigh, pretending to focus on the traffic lights. But deep down, Evelyn's face wouldn't leave his mind. Richard was 33, successful, focused, and admired by many, yet still searching for something money couldn't buy. A true soulmate. Despite his wealth and charm, he'd grown tired of meeting women drawn only to his status. What he wanted was someone genuine, someone whose heart was as beautiful as her words. That night, after dropping his mother home, he sat in his room scrolling through his phone. His thoughts drifted back to Evelyn, her calm voice, her simple elegance, and the honesty in her eyes. Without thinking too long, he opened WhatsApp and typed, "Hi, Evelyn. Hope you got home safely? How did everything go with the client you came to meet?" He hesitated for a moment before hitting send, wondering if she'd reply. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. A new message from Evelyn. "Yes, I did, Richard. Thank you for checking in. The meeting went well." He smiled at the screen, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. It was a small beginning, but something about it felt right, like fate had quietly started writing their story. Evelyn's story began long before that quiet evening by the roadside. It began with two people who once loved each other deeply. Her father, Robert Harper, was a strong and ambitious man, known for his sharp mind and hard-working nature. Her mother, Clara, a strong, gentle woman with a soft southern accent and a faith that could move mountains, was gentle and graceful, the kind of woman whose presence could calm any storm. They met in their mid-20s at a community art fair. Robert was sponsoring the event, and Clara was one of the artists displaying her work. What began as casual admiration soon bloomed into love. Within a year, they were married. In the early years, their home was filled with laughter. Robert adored Clara, and when Evelyn was born, she became the light that made their small family complete. But as Robert's business began to grow, so did the pressures that came with success. Late nights turned into long absences, and long absences slowly turned into drinking. First to relax, then to escape. Clara tried everything to bring him back. Gentle talks, quiet prayers, late night waiting by the door. But the man she loved seemed to be slipping away. The arguments became frequent, the silence between them heavier. And though Robert never stopped loving his family, his actions spoke louder than his heart. One rainy evening, after yet another night of waiting, Clara quietly packed a small bag. She walked into Evelyn's room, kissed her sleeping daughter on the forehead, and left a folded letter on the kitchen table. A letter that trembled with love, pain, and hope. In it, she wrote, "Robert, I love you, but I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore. I've tried to help, but you no longer see the woman or the child who waits for you every night. I'm leaving. Not because I've stopped caring, but because maybe losing me will make you find yourself again. I'll always pray for you and for our daughter. Please take care of her, and when you do, let her remember love, not pain." When Robert came home that night and found the letter, he broke down. It was the first time in years that he truly saw the wreckage of his own choices. From that day forward, he changed. He quit drinking, rebuilt his business, and poured all his energy into raising Evelyn. He taught her discipline, kindness, and humility, values he learned too late, but wanted her to live by. Evelyn grew up seeing her father as both protector and teacher, never speaking ill of the woman who left. Robert never remarried. He wanted Evelyn to know that her mother's absence didn't mean she wasn't loved. 3 years later, after her mom left, her dad fell ill. He tried reaching out to Clara countless times. His voice, once strong, now trembled with weakness each time he called. "Please, Clara," he would say over the phone, "come back home. I'm not feeling well. I just want to see you and Evelyn together again." Evelyn, heartbroken, also pleaded with her mother. "Mom, please," she said softly one evening, tears in her eyes. "Dad has changed. He's not the same man you left. He needs you, especially in a time like this." But Clara, though her heart ached, couldn't bring herself to return. "My daughter," she replied gently, "you are now an adult. Take care of him. He'll be fine. It's just a little illness. He will be strong." 2 weeks later, Evelyn's world shattered. Her father passed away quietly in his sleep, his phone still beside him, with Clara's number as the last dial call. Before taking his final breath, he left a handwritten letter on his study desk addressed to Evelyn. It read, "My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means my time has come. You've been my greatest gift and my reason to change. Everything I own, every property, every account, every investment belongs to you. You are my next of kin, my legacy, and my pride. Lie with humility, lead with kindness, and never forget that love is worth more than wealth. You're lovely, Dad." That letter became Evelyn's strength, a final act of love from a father who found redemption too late, but left behind everything to ensure his daughter never lacked again. Immediately, there was a knock at the door. Evelyn rushed and opened, and it was Clara, her mum, who returned, older, quieter, and filled with regret. She came not as a stranger, but as a mother seeking redemption. Evelyn welcomed her with open arms, and together they rebuilt what time had stolen. Since then, Clara became Evelyn's silent strength, the voice that guided her, the comfort that healed her. Though life had separated them once, fate had brought them back together, just in time for Evelyn to learn that even broken families can heal when love decides to forgive. Over the next few months, Evelyn and Richard's paths cross again. One meeting turned into lunch. One lunch turned into long evening conversations. She never told him who she really was. Not the wealth, not the estates, not the inheritance. She wanted to be loved for her soul, not her surname. After her father's passing, Evelyn devoted herself to preserving his legacy. She took full responsibility for managing her father's multimillion-dollar real estate empire business. Not by selling them, but by breathing new life into each one through her passion for interior design. Room by room, she transformed her father's estates into elegant, welcoming spaces that reflected both beauty and memory. It became more than a business to her. It was how she kept her father's presence alive. When Richard asked about her work during their growing friendship, Evelyn only smiled and said softly, "I'm just an interior designer. It's something I really love." She never mentioned that most of those spaces belonged to her, or that she was managing an empire quietly built by her father's sweat and sacrifice. To Richard, she was just a humble designer chasing her dreams, and that was all she wanted him to know. But not everyone saw her the way Richard did. Patricia grew colder with every passing day, making snide comments, mocking Evelyn's simple clothes, the way she spoke softly, the way she avoided luxury brands. "She's too ordinary," Patricia said one evening at dinner. "She's not your kind of woman, Richard." His siblings joined in too, whispering, laughing, calling her the roadside girl. But through every insult, Evelyn stayed silent. She believed that storms reveal character, and she refused to lose hers. There was only one person she confided in, her mother, Clara Harper. Evelyn often called her late at night, crying quietly, and her mother would always say the same thing in the nickname she gave her as a child. "My Evie girl." Don't let their pride steal your peace. Some people won't see your worth until it shines in their darkness. Stay calm, baby. One day, they'll understand who you really are. Those words became her anchor. Even Richard didn't know how much pain she was hiding behind her smile. But Evelyn's mother is also a secret, one Evelyn didn't plan to share. No one knew her mom was alive. She had told Richard and his family that her father was a single dad and she was his only child. She wanted to protect her mother's peace, privacy, and her own peace. What no one knew, not Richard, not Patricia, not anyone, was that her mother, Clara Harper, would one day walk into their lives at the most unexpected moment. And when that day came, karma would finally speak louder than any insult ever thrown her way. Months passed, and Evelyn's presence in Richard's life became something no one could ignore. She wasn't the loudest in the room, but her calmness spoke volumes. She didn't dress in designer clothes or show off expensive jewelry, yet every time she smiled, people listened. Richard was drawn to that. Her peace, her grace, her quiet strength that steadied him when life's noise became too loud. They started spending more time together. Richard took her out for dinner in small restaurants, not the fancy ones his family was used to. They went hiking on weekends, cooking simple meals together, laughing at little things. Evelyn never asked for gifts, money, or attention. She was content just being around him. For the first time, Richard felt something real, something deeper than status or expectations. But not everyone saw what he saw. Patricia couldn't hide her disdain. Every time Evelyn showed up, Patricia's expression hardened like stone. She made remarks that sliced through the air like knives. "You know, Richard," she would say in front of guests, "a woman's appearance says a lot about her values. Some people just lack presentation." Her words carried venom wrapped in fake politeness. Evelyn would just smile and nod, refusing to argue. Richard's siblings weren't much different. His sister, Chloe, once whispered at a family brunch, "Do you think she even knows what caviar is?" The others laughed quietly, pretending not to notice Evelyn sitting at the table, her fingers gently folding a napkin in her lap. Richard saw it all and tried to defend her, but Evelyn would stop him every time. "Don't," she'd whisper. "You don't fight pride with anger. You let time teach the lesson." At night, she'd call her mother. Her voice would tremble, though she tried to sound strong. "Mama, sometimes it feels like I don't belong. No matter what I do, they find something wrong." Her mom, her gentle voice full of warmth, would say, "My Evie girl, you're not the one out of place. You're the one sent there to show them what grace looks like. Remember what I told you. Never let someone's ignorance steal your peace." Evelyn would close her eyes, breathe deeply, and smile faintly. "I know, Mama. I just hope they see my heart someday." Behind that simple smile, Evelyn carried more wisdom than most people twice her age. She remembered her father's words before he passed. "Wealth fades when pride leads, but kindness multiplies even in silence." That became her compass. She used her resources quietly, helping people who never knew her name. She donated anonymously to a local shelter near Richard's business office. When one of Richard's workers lost his home in a fire outbreak, she arranged new housing for his family, without ever revealing she was behind it. And while Patricia was busy calling her a gold digger, Evelyn was paying medical bills for a child she had never met. She believed goodness didn't need an audience. Richard began to notice small things. How the shelter near his company suddenly had new equipment. How one of the struggling employees mentioned a kind angel who helped them. How Evelyn always seemed calm, never shaken by rumors or insults. He began to realize there was something extraordinary about the woman he loved, something his family's pride couldn't comprehend. But the more Richard drew closer to Evelyn, the more his mother grew distant. Patricia started inviting other women to family gatherings, daughters of wealthy friends, dressed to impress. She'd make sure Evelyn saw it. "Richard, dear, you remember Grace Porter, right? Her father owns half of downtown." Evelyn would smile, shake hands politely, and excuse herself when the conversation turned into boasting. That night, Patricia confronted her in private. "Listen, dear," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "You seem like a nice girl, but you'll never fit into our world. My son deserves someone who matches his class." Evelyn stood quietly for a moment, her eyes soft but firm. "Mrs. Lewis," she said gently, "true class isn't about matching pockets. It's about matching hearts." She turned and walked away without another word. The next morning, she visited her mother again. She told her everything that happened. "Try not to cry. Her mum listened quietly, then smiled through the phone. "My Evie girl, you've already won. You don't need to fight for acceptance. The right people will recognize your light without you having to prove it." Evelyn whispered, "I hope that day comes soon, Mama." And her mother, with a knowing tone, replied, "It will, baby. But when it does, let your heart be humble enough to forgive. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is success, but loudest revenge is grace. And so, my daughter, please keep calm, because the world is not always as planned." Evelyn didn't know those words would become prophecy. Because soon, life would test her humility in ways she never imagined. And the same people who mocked her simplicity would find themselves bowing to her strength. Love had a strange way of silencing noise. As the months rolled by, Evelyn and Richard's bond deepened into something rare, something pure. It wasn't built on wealth, gifts, or status, but on laughter, shared dreams, and silent understanding. They found joy in small things. The smell of morning coffee, late-night drives with the windows down, quiet walks to the park where Evelyn's hair danced with the wind. Richard loved how she never tried to impress anyone. She didn't wear luxury perfumes or chase attention. She was genuine, honest, and grounded. With Evelyn, he could breathe, free from the pressure of his family's expectations and the polished perfection they demanded. But Patricia couldn't stand it. Every time she saw her son smiling, because of Evelyn, jealousy twisted inside her. She wanted a daughter-in-law she could brag about, someone from a family with influence, not a plain girl who had nothing to show but modesty. One Sunday afternoon, during a family dinner, Patricia's sharp tongue couldn't resist another jab. "Richard," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "don't you think your girlfriend should try to look more presentable for family gatherings? You're bringing someone who doesn't even know how to wear pearls properly." The table went quiet. Evelyn's hand froze midair as she placed her fork down gently. She smiled, her voice calm and steady. "Mrs. Lewis, I appreciate the advice. I'll try better next time." Patricia smirked, satisfied with her insult. But Richard's face darkened. "Mom, that's enough," he said firmly. But Evelyn reached for his hand and whispered, "Let it go. Please." That moment defined her strength, not in shouting back, but in staying graceful while being humiliated. Her silence spoke louder than any defense. Days later, Patricia hosted a charity gala and deliberately excluded Evelyn from the invitation list. Richard found out and confronted her. "You think humiliating her will make me stop loving her? You're wrong." Patricia's response was cold. "Love doesn't last when money dries up. Richard, one day you'll thank me." But Evelyn never stopped showing kindness, even to those who despised her. When Patricia's youngest son, David, needed help with a college project, Evelyn stayed up late helping him with research, smiling as if she'd never been insulted. When Richard's sister, Chloe, had an anxiety attack before a business pitch, it was Evelyn who showed up at her office with coffee and comforting words. Slowly, the walls began to crack. Some of Richard's siblings started to see who Evelyn really was, but Patricia refused to bend. Evelyn often called her mother during those nights, her voice weary but soft. "Mama, I keep loving them even when they don't love me back." Sometimes it hurts, tears in her eyes. And Claire would reply, "My Evie girl, love isn't weakness. It's strength in disguise. Let them throw stones. Grace will build you a castle with them one day." One weekend, Richard took Evelyn on a short trip to the countryside. As they sat by a lake, the sun melting into the horizon, he turned to her and said, "Evelyn, I don't care what anyone says, especially my mom. I want to build my life with you, and I don't want her to scare you away from me." Her eyes widened, tears glistening as she whispered, "Are you sure? Your family." He cut her off gently. "My family will learn. You've taught me what real love means. You're my peace, Evelyn." She smiled through her tears, resting her head on his shoulder. "Then I'll stand by you through whatever comes next." When Richard proposed a month later, Patricia didn't celebrate. Instead, she warned him, "If you marry that girl, don't expect my blessings." Richard stood his ground and said, "Then I'll build my own blessings." The news spread through the family, and everyone had an opinion. Some supported, some criticized, but Evelyn stayed calm through it all. She wasn't marrying into wealth. She was marrying love. Her mother, though distant from the public eye, was her rock. Over the phone, Clara's voice trembled with joy. "My Evie girl, you've made your choice with your heart. And one day, that heart will be the reason even your enemies bow their heads." The wedding plans began quietly. Evelyn insisted on something simple but elegant. Patricia refused to be involved, claiming she wanted nothing to do with such mediocrity. Still, Evelyn sent her an invitation, with love, not pride. Behind every decision, Evelyn's humility guided her. She didn't seek revenge, didn't complain, didn't boast about her wealth. She just kept moving with grace, one step at a time. But life was preparing to turn the tables. Because on the road to that wedding, fate was waiting, ready to expose every hidden truth, every secret heart, and every prideful tongue that once mocked her simplicity. And when it happened, love would triumph over status in a way no one saw coming. The days leading to the wedding were supposed to be filled with laughter, music, and dreams. But for Evelyn, each day carried the weight of quiet storms. The woman she hoped would one day become her mother-in-law had instead become her greatest trial. Patricia's insults grew sharper with every passing hour. Whispers at family dinners, cold glares in public, and loud humiliations behind closed doors. "You think wearing a designer dress makes you fit for my son?" Patricia hissed one evening. "You'll never belong in our world. Girls like you come to take, not to build." Evelyn stood there, her eyes moist but her lips sealed. She didn't fight back. She simply smiled, bowed slightly, and walked away. For every cruel word, she gave a gentle silence. For every rejection, she offered quiet respect. It was her mother's voice that echoed inside her heart. "Never fight hate with hate, my daughter. Let time reveal who you truly are." Richard, torn between love and loyalty, tried to bridge the gap. He would hold Evelyn's hands and whisper, "Please be patient with my mom. She's not bad, just proud. I promise she'll see your heart one day." Evelyn would smile, even though her heart trembled. But just days before the wedding, fate tested their love in the harshest way. Richard's main business network, the one that handled all his financial transactions, suddenly crashed. It was a system glitch that froze all his funds. Payments of the venue, the catering, the decorations. Everything was halted. Calls were made, promises given, but nothing worked. In panic, Richard buried his head in his palms. "Evelyn, this is a disaster. I can't access a dime. Maybe we should postpone the wedding." Evelyn looked at him calmly, her heart steady. She walked to him, placed her hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "No, the wedding will go on." He looked up, confused, and said, "But how? Everything's frozen." She smiled faintly and said, "Are you this blind that you can't figure out the woman you fell in love with? I may not wear diamonds every day, but I'm not poor, Richard. My father didn't just leave me memories. He left me a legacy." That night, she made a few quiet calls. Within hours, her estate manager transferred the funds needed. Every payment was cleared. Every pending deal was handled. And she did it without telling a soul. When the wedding morning came, the sun seemed to rise just for her. But Patricia was restless. "Where's the decorator? Where are the payments? Richard, how are we affording all this when your account is locked?" she demanded. Richard shrugged, confused. I don't know, Mom. Evelyn said everything's handled." Patricia scoffed. "Handled? By her? Don't make me laugh." But as the guests began to arrive, the hall glimmered with elegance. The flowers were exquisite, the food lavish, the music divine. Every single detail screamed wealth and taste. Still, Patricia grumbled, convinced it was luck or manipulation. Then came the biggest surprise of all. As Evelyn stood in her wedding gown, simple, graceful, yet royal, an older woman walked through the entrance. Her presence commanded silence. It was Evelyn's mother, dressed in an elegant cream lace dress, adorned with quiet confidence and timeless grace. Whispers filled the room. No one had seen her before. No one even knew she existed. Patricia frowned. "Who is that woman?" she asked. Evelyn turned, tears glistening in her eyes, and smiled. "That's my mother, my teacher, life coach. She's my everything." Patricia's jaw dropped. Evelyn had always said her father raised her alone. No one knew the truth, that her mother had chosen to stay out of the public eye to protect her daughter from judgment and greed. As Evelyn's mother walked closer, she hugged her daughter tightly and whispered, "You did well, my child. You showed them that strength isn't loud, it's humble." And in that moment, Patricia felt a chill. Something deep within her heart began to shift. For the first time, she looked at Evelyn, really looked, and saw not simplicity but grace. Not poverty, but quiet power. The wedding continued, but Patricia could no longer lift her head proudly. Every petal, every light, every smile in that hall whispered one message. Karma had arrived quietly, dressed in humility. The air inside the grand wedding hall was thick with emotions, love, shock, and something else Patricia couldn't name. For the first time, she wasn't the one commanding the room. All eyes were on Evelyn, the young woman she had once called ordinary, unfit, and a gold digger. The whispers around the tables grew louder. "Who is she, really?" someone asked. "I heard she sponsored the whole wedding herself," another replied. "No way. That simple-looking girl?" Patricia sat frozen in her seat, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The elegant chandeliers above cast a golden light over everything, and with each flicker, her shame deepened. The woman she had insulted, mocked, and publicly humiliated was now the silent reason the entire celebration stood shining before her. Evelyn walked down the aisle with a quiet majesty. Her wedding gown shimmered like soft pearls under the light. No extravagant jewelry, no overdone makeup, just a breathtaking simplicity that carried power. Every step she took felt like a response to every insult Patricia had ever thrown at her. When she reached Richard, he took her hands with trembling joy. His eyes watered as he whispered, "You saved me, Evelyn. You saved everything." She smiled softly. Love isn't about who is more, Richard. It's about who stands by you when everything falls apart. But Patricia could barely breathe. Her pride was crumbling. She wanted to look away, but Karma was standing right in front of her, in white. Moments later, the officiant announced it was time for family speeches. Patricia had no words. She wanted to hide, but Richard insisted, "Mom, please, say something." She walked up slowly, clutching the microphone, her voice trembling. "I once thought my son deserved someone grand," she began, her eyes darting toward Evelyn. "Someone who would match his wealth, his name, his world." But today, tears rolling down her cheek as she continued, "I see I was blind. True class isn't what money can buy. It's what the heart gives freely. And Evelyn, you've given more than I ever could." Gasps filled the room. Evelyn's eyes shimmered, not with triumph, but with forgiveness. Then Evelyn's mother stood up, smiling graciously. "That's the beauty of life," she said gently. "Karma doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it teaches." Everyone applauded. The sound rolled to the hall like thunder, and Patricia broke down in tears, rushing to hug Evelyn. "I'm so sorry, my dear," she whispered. "I judged what I could see, not what you carried inside." Evelyn hugged her back, tears finally falling. "You don't owe me an apology, Mom. You just needed time to see my heart." The room erupted in warmth, a rare kind of silence filled with peace. Even Richard's siblings, who once mocked Evelyn, came forward, hugging her and congratulating her with sincere smiles. Outside, the sky broke open in a soft drizzle, a cleansing rain that seemed to wash away every bitterness from the past. Patricia stood beside Evelyn under the same umbrella, no longer seeing her as a simple girl from nowhere, but as the daughter she never knew she needed. And as the music swelled, Evelyn looked up to the heavens and whispered, "Daddy, I hope you're proud." Because that day, Karma didn't just speak. It sang. It sang of grace over pride. It sang of love over class and humility over arrogance. And its melody echoed long after the wedding bells stopped ringing. The wedding had ended, but its echo lingered in every heart that witnessed it. Patricia, the once proud, commanding woman, now sat quietly in the corner of the reception hall, her thoughts heavier than the jewelry around her neck. The woman who once looked down on Evelyn now found herself looking up to her in awe as the guests left one after another. Evelyn approached Patricia with a soft smile. "Mother," she said gently, "thank you for coming." Patricia looked up, her eyes red with emotion. "Evelyn," she whispered, "you have every reason to hate me. I insulted you, called you names, treated you like nothing, and yet you gave me respect when I gave you none. You saved this wedding when I thought you came to ruin it. I don't deserve your kindness." Evelyn knelt slightly, taking Patricia's hands. "You do, ma'am, because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. Even when people hurt us, we must leave space for them to grow." That moment broke Patricia completely. She wept, not out of shame anymore, but out of awakening. The woman who had once been controlled by status and pride now saw the emptiness behind those things. For the first time in her life, she saw that true wealth wasn't what you owned, but in the peace you carried inside. Later that evening, Patricia walked over to Evelyn's mother, Clara Harper, who was standing by the garden watching the sunset. The older woman turned with a smile that seemed to hold a lifetime of wisdom. "You raised a rare kind of woman," Patricia said softly. "I can't imagine how proud you must be." Evelyn's mother nodded. "I didn't raise her to be rich, Patricia. I raised her to be kind. The world teaches us to compete, but I taught her to shine quietly, because light doesn't have to shout." Patricia's eyes filled again. "She changed me, completely." "She didn't change you," Evelyn's mother replied gently. "She reminded you who you really are before pride took over." Patricia bowed her head. "Then I owe her and you my respect for life." By nightfall, Evelyn and Richard were ready to leave for their honeymoon. As they walked toward the car, Patricia followed behind. "Wait," she called softly. Evelyn turned, and Patricia handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a diamond bracelet, but not just any bracelet. It was the one Patricia's late husband had given her on their own wedding day. "I want you to have this," Patricia said, her voice trembling. "It's not because of wealth or tradition. It's because today you taught me what love truly means. You become my daughter not by marriage, but by heart." Evelyn's lips quivered. She hugged Patricia tightly. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, and this time the word Mom carried truth. The sky turned golden as they drove away, leaving behind not just a wedding hall, but healed family. Weeks later, Patricia began visiting Evelyn's estate, not to flaunt wealth, but to learn humility. She joined Evelyn's charitable work, helping widows and single mothers rebuild their lives. Each day, she found joy in giving, not in showing. Evelyn's story spread quietly around town. The girl who was insulted for her simplicity, yet blessed an entire family with her grace. People began saying, "If you ever doubt the power of humility, remember Evelyn." And somewhere in that truth, Patricia's once proud heart found peace. Never judge a person by how simple they appear, because sometimes simplicity is a disguise worn by strength, grace, and silent power. Karma may take its time, but when it arrives, it doesn't always punish. Sometimes it teaches, and those lessons last forever. Thanks for watching.